case of Jolly Joseph. This whole story is about a family in Kerala. The entire family lived in the Kothayam village, in the Kothayam district of Kerala. This family was considered one of the wealthiest in the village. The head of the family was named Tom Thomas, and his wife's name was Annama Thomas. They had two sons, Roho Thomas and Roy Thomas. In 1997, the elder son, Roy Thomas, had a grand wedding with a girl named Jolly Joseph. After the wedding, Jolly quickly became the family's favorite, managing their affairs efficiently. Despite her kind nature, Jolly was also a devout woman who attended daily prayers. Jolly married Roy Thomas when he was unemployed and depended on his father for expenses. However, after marriage, Jolly continued her studies and later informed the family that she had obtained a job at the National Institute of Technology in Calicut. If occasional minor disagreements are overlooked, the family was very happy and everyone's lifestyle was going well. However, in 2002, Annama Thomas suddenly fell ill, leading to her immediate admission to the hospital. After a few days of treatment, her health improved and she is sent home. Just 2 months after returning home, on August 22, 2002, once again Annama Thomas falls ill. This time she passes away before being taken to the hospital. Based on symptoms, it is said that her death occurred due to a heart attack. To understand the actual cause of death, the doctor recommends a postmortem, but the family refuses, considering this death as a natural one. In this way, without any postmortem, the final rites of Annama Thomas are performed. The sudden departure of a crucial member of the household deeply shocks everyone, causing considerable distress for a long time. However, as time passes, everyone's life gradually returns to normal. After her mother-in-law died, Jolly became the female head of the family. Jolly is intelligent, extroverted, very good at handling work, and has extensive relationships both inside and outside the family, loved by everyone. After taking financial control, Jolly bought himself a new car, drove every morning pretending to go to work, and returned home at night. During this time, Jolly's husband Roy began to drink alcohol and did nothing. Once again, the eldest member of the family was Tom Thomas. The date was August 26, 2008, just a few days after the 6th death anniversary of Annama Thomas. Other relatives were also present at the home. Suddenly, another death occurs in the family. This time, it's the head of the family, Tom Thomas, who passes away unexpectedly. Initial investigations also attribute his death to a heart attack. The family does not opt for a postmortem for Tom Thomas, and he is laid to rest in a similar manner. Within a span of 6 years, 2 deaths in the family bring significant changes. Where it used to be a joint family, property division now takes place among the remaining members, and almost everyone begins to live as a nuclear family. The 2 previous deaths were not even forgotten when the family faces the death of a 3rd member on September 9, 2011, Jolly's husband, Roy Thomas. Roy Thomas's body was found in the bathroom. Since there had been 2 sudden deaths in this family before, when the 3rd member of the household also dies unexpectedly, some family members suspect foul play rather than considering it a mere coincidence. The decision is made to conduct a postmortem on Roy Thomas. During the postmortem, traces of cyanide poison are discovered in Roy Thomas's body. Further investigation reveals that Roy Thomas was facing financial difficulties in those days. According to Roy Thomas's wife, it was the financial problems that led her husband to commit suicide. The initial police inquiry also highlights Roy Thomas's financial problems. And with the conclusion that he took his own life, the case is closed. The case had been closed, but the series of deaths in the family continued. The next death in the family was scheduled for February 24, 2014. This time, the deceased was Matthew Mangeley, the brother of Annama Thomas. Matthew Mangeley's death also occurred suddenly, and despite no postmortem being conducted, it was considered a mere coincidence. The family was experiencing consecutive deaths, but no one could understand how these deaths were occurring. Initial police investigations revealed no suspicions, and speculation arose that some malevolent force had taken hold of the family, causing mysterious deaths one after another. Some even began to discuss the possibility of a curse afflicting the family. Shortly after the fourth person in the family passed away, another death happened. This time, Alphine Zacharias, the niece of Roy Thomas and daughter of Shadu Thomas, died. Alphine was just 2 years old when she passed, and her death was sudden. 2 years after that incident, on January 11, 2016, Alphine's mother, Shadu Thomas's wife, Sally Saras, also dies under suspicious circumstances. The mysterious deaths of 6 family members have happened in a puzzling way over the past 14 years, with one death following another. Not only that, shortly after Sally's death, 2 distant relatives of this family also died in a road accident. Jolly, who became a widow, then married Shadu Thomas, who was the cousin brother of Roy Thomas, and they started living together in 2016. However, one family member did not believe that the deaths in the family were due to a curse or evil spirit. This family member was Rojo Thomas, the son of Anama Thomas and the brother of Roy Thomas. Rojo Thomas was working in America at the time, and after the 6th family member passed away, he started to think that it was not just a coincidence, but a deliberate plan. Rojo Thomas then goes to the local police station, files a case, and appeals to the police to thoroughly investigate the depths of all the motives in the family deaths. Rojo Thomas initiates his own investigation at his level. The people alive in the family were Shaju Thomas and Jolly Joseph, who were now left among the surviving family members. The police initially did not take the investigation seriously, but Rojo Thomas's own investigation revealed a shocking truth before the police. Jolly had claimed a few years ago that she was working as a commerce lecturer at NIT Calicut. However, upon investigation, Rojo discovered that there was no teacher named Jolly at NIT Calicut. Jolly not only showed her job identity card to support her claims at NIT Calicut, but also shared it with her family. Upon examination, the university administration confirmed that the identity card was fake. Furthermore, the investigation conducted by Rojo Thomas indicates that Jolly Joseph was present during all the deaths or sudden illnesses that have taken place. The fact that Jolly was around for all 6 deaths was not a mere coincidence, but instead suggested a major conspiracy. As a result, the police's suspicion is now focused on Jolly. The deaths previously considered as natural are now under investigation again. Rojo Thomas filed a written complaint against Jolly, connected to Roy Thomas's death at the police station. Suspicions are also raised against Jolly in 5 other mysterious deaths. The police have registered the case and intensified their investigation, starting with exhuming the bodies of all 6 family members buried in the cemeteries near St. Lord Church in Kidai Canal and St. Mary's Church in Kuno over the past 14 years. These bodies are sent for forensic examination. Recognizing the seriousness of the case, Kerala Police calls upon forensic scientists from various countries to help with the investigation. Meanwhile, the police question Jolly Joseph, who at first denies any role in the deaths of these 6 people. However, as the police intensify their interrogation and expand their list of inquiries, Jolly becomes ensnared and eventually reveals the shocking truth. Jolly admits to poisoning her family members for the past 14 years. When the police investigated the motives behind these murders, an even more startling revelation unfolded. According to Jolly's disclosures during the police interrogation, each murder had its own specific motive. Jolly first tried to kill her mother-in-law, Anima Thomas, in 2002 but failed. Later, she secretly added poison to Anima's mutton soup when everyone was busy. Anima soon died from the poisoning. Jolly was unhappy because Anima was in charge of the family's finances, so she decided to get rid of her. Jolly's second victim was her father-in-law, Tom Thomas. The reason behind this was that around 2008, Jolly's husband, Roy Thomas, was facing financial problems. When Jolly sought help from her father, Tom sold 2 acres of land, giving the entire amount to Jolly and Roy. Along with this, he declared that neither of them would have any share in the remaining family property. Jolly then forged property documents, giving Roy Thomas and herself a share in the remaining wealth. Later, Jolly secretly poisoned Tom Thomas's food, leading to his death. Suspicions were raised by Roy Thomas, but he lacked support from other family members. Subsequently, Jolly orchestrated her husband's demise. According to the revelations, Roy Thomas was also facing financial difficulties and had become addicted to alcohol, which led to conflicts between Roy and Jolly. Seizing an opportunity, Jolly poisoned her husband's food, resulting in his death. After the death of Roy Thomas, Matthew, the brother of Anama Thomas and Roy's uncle, was the person who contested Roy's death as not a natural one, insisting on a postmortem. Despite the confirmation of traces of poison found in the body during the postmortem, Jolly cleverly convinced the police that Roy had committed suicide willingly, as per Matthew's insistence on the postmortem. Consequently, suspicion fell on Jolly, and in 2014, she secretly poisoned Matthew's drink, leading to his death. Jolly's next target is 2-year-old Alina. After killing her husband, Jolly becomes attracted to her deceased husband's cousin, Shadu Thomas. The issue is that Shadu Thomas is already married with a daughter. With evil intentions, Jolly murders Shadu's 2-year-old daughter, Alina, in 2014 before marrying Shadu Thomas. Later in 2016, Shadu's wife, Celie, also dies. Following this revelation, the police suspect that Shadu Thomas might also be involved in Jolly's plan. Consequently, Shadu is taken into custody for questioning. However, no evidence against Shadu surfaces. When Jolly is asked about her claim of going to study at NIT Calicut for the past 14 years, it is revealed that she never actually went there, as per the college records. Jolly then discloses that she used to leave home on time every day, but most of the time, she spent in a nearby church, assisting with its activities. Additionally, sometimes, she would spend time in the canteen on the NIT campus. A surprising revelation in this entire investigation is that everyone with whom Jolly had any connection had a good relationship with her. Talking and laughing with everyone was Jolly's habit, and no one had ever heard her raising her voice at someone. Even the neighbors never tired of praising Jolly. After the revelation in the Jolly case, finally, on October 5, 2019, 47-year-old Jolly Joseph is arrested, accused of murdering 6 family members, including her father-in-law and husband. Many find it hard to believe that a woman known to be family-oriented, well-respected and kind could be a cold-blooded killer. The investigation discloses that Jolly was provided poison by a person named Matthew, who happened to be Jolly's relative. Matthew's friend Prachi Kumar, employed at a jewelry shop, facilitated the procurement of cyanide, commonly used for cleaning gold and silver ornaments. Cyanide samples are found in Jolly's car and bag during the police search. The evidence, which includes Jolly's confession and scientific findings, led to a 1,800-page charge sheet filed by the police on January 1, 2020. Jolly is facing charges for 6 murders. Even though Jolly was granted bail by the Kerala High Court in 2021, the Kerala government contested the decision in the Supreme Court. At present, Jolly is still in jail, and the case remains a legal dispute. Following the hearing, the Supreme Court denied Jolly's bail, leading to Jolly's continued detention. Just a few months after these revelations, Jolly's second husband, Shaju, also filed for divorce in court. While the investigation into this case is ongoing, some new revelations related to the case emerged in February 2023. The Kerala police had sent the bodies to the CFSL laboratory in Hyderabad after exhuming them from their graves. The report stated that no trace of cyanide was found in 4 out of the 6 bodies recovered, and the examination of the remaining 2 bodies is still underway. Despite the claim, the Kerala police stated that due to the many years since the murders, it is challenging to find traces of cyanide after exhumation. According to the police, even if no traces of cyanide are found in the investigation, Jolly's confession and circumstantial evidence are so strong that her guilt will be proven in court, and she will be given a severe punishment. It has been reported that the police are the ones responsible for what happened in this Kai. Had the mother-in-law, who was the first victim, received a more extensive investigation, further casualties could have been prevented. A Loleta resident went boating on the Eel River with his son on March 27, 1998, in search of driftwood. Unexpectedly, they came across human remains close to Cork Robin Island. The body was half-dressed and had been submerged for a considerable amount of time. No ID was discovered. They quickly informed the police about the discovery without further delay. Who was this person and how did they get into the river? The city of Loleta in California has a distinct atmosphere. It is a location where the bustling of daily life coexists with the whispers of the ocean. This town has a distinctive blend for both residents and visitors, offering both recreational and historic spots. You'll notice a sense of community if you leave here. People are well acquainted and often exchange stories. They treasure the landmarks and frequently explore them on the weekends. But Loleta has its problems. Just like many other places, some people find the crime rate to be a little concerning. But among these stats, one case stands out, which is the mystery surrounding the remains discovered by the Eel River. On a typical day in March 1998, a Loleta resident and his son made the decision to travel to the Eel River. Residents looking for driftwood to sell frequented the river, and countless boating trips had taken place there, but none has been recorded like this one. The tranquility of the day was shattered by a terrifying sight close to Cork Robin Island as the boat skimmed the surface of the river. The local and his son were immediately drawn to the outline of a human body, partially clothed, bouncing in the lazily flowing river. An immediate call to the local sheriff's office was made in response to the eerie sight. The sheriff's deputies arrived quickly at the scene with a jet boat. The sight was humbling. Not only was the body dead, but it also had visible signs of a protracted submersion. It was difficult to immediately identify any distinctive characteristics due to the advanced decomposition. The individual, a white adult male, had clear measurements of about 5 feet 10 inches tall, 170 pounds, and a look that indicated he was between 35 and 45 years old. Because they didn't know who he was, they gave him the name Loleta John Doe. The medical experts estimated that the remains had been submerged for about a month after performing a thorough autopsy. A possible drowning was determined to be the cause of death. Detectives wondered what had happened to the man before that crucial moment. The sudden appearance of the John Doe from Loleta shocked the neighborhood, leading detectives to launch a thorough investigation into his identity. The California Department of Justice played a crucial role in these efforts earlier. They discovered a latent fingerprint during their thorough search for hints. Surprisingly, it was his fingerprint. This was a significant discovery because fingerprints left behind during decomposition typically aren't helpful. Hope grew. This might be the clue that unlocks the mystery. However, these hopes were dashed after the advanced search through of the automated latent print system. The man's identity was still unknown because the fingerprint produced no matches. And phased, the investigative team enlisted the assistance of a nearby dentist. Another layer of the mystery was revealed by a forensic dental examination. However, just like with the fingerprints, no solutions were found. DNA was the final frontier as the process of elimination continued. It was hoped that the man's genetic makeup would eventually assign him a name. 2 significant databases, the National Unidentified Persons DNA Index and the California Missing Persons DNA Database, each received a meticulously collected DNA sample from the remains. In order to cast a wider net, the case's specifics were painstakingly entered into the NAMUS under the designation UP 54357. This DNA profile was periodically compared with missing person and other human remains profiles in the CODI's combined index system. The search turned up nothing, though there was no matches to any profiles. The identity of Loleta John Doe remained cloaked in mystery. The enthusiasm of the initial investigation started to wane as the months and years passed. Cases involving missing persons are never really closed by nature. There are often reminders of unresolved cold cases. However, it is a fact that some trails become cold. This case of the Loleta John Doe appeared to be settling into the icy realm of the unsolved, despite the tenacious pursuit and the efforts of seasoned investigators. But then, in December 2022, which was 24 years later, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. They collaborated with the cutting-edge forensic genealogy lab named Offroom Incorporated. The goal was straightforward but ambitious. Use cutting-edge DNA techniques to cut through the darkness and identify the enigmatic man, or at the very least find a close relative. The detectives sent a DNA sample from the preserved remains to Othram with the aid of Rhodes to Justice Funding. The researchers painstakingly constructed an extensive DNA profile using state-of-the-art forensic-grade genome sequencing. Once put together, this DNA profile was given to Othram's knowledgeable genealogy team. They started piecing together the man's history using forensic genetic genealogy and looked for leads that could lead to an explanation. In 2023, the cloud of doubt that had been hanging over the John Doe case from Loleta started to lift. A revelation that came about in the middle of February provided many people with the sense of closure they had been fervently seeking. Othram sent a report to the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office. The meticulously crafted DNA profile identified one person as Jeffrey Todd Cito. It appeared as though John Doe was starting to speak after a long period of silence. But there was more to the report than just a name. Links to a network of genetic relatives were soon revealed. A potential sister named Cheryl, who lived in Missouri, was prominently mentioned. Investigators from the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office got in touch with Cheryl in an effort to fill in the gaps in this intricate puzzle. The contact caused the mystery to further clarify itself. Cheryl confirmed her ties to Loleta John Doe after being shocked by what she had learned. She admitted that Jeffrey Todd Cito was her brother, but the story she spun had a melancholy undertone. For unknown reasons, Jeffrey had cut off all contact with the family around the middle of the 1990s. Despite their strength, a family's ties had been broken in some way. Cheryl made every effort to bridge this gap, but she was unable to track down or reunite with Jeffrey. Given the ambiguity surrounding Jeffrey's intentions, whether he had chosen to distance himself or if other forces were at work, this added another level of complexity. They never made a formal report of his disappearance. In many ways, his fate had been shrouded in mystery for so long due to the lack of such a report. However, the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office had a chance after receiving Othram's report. Now they could directly contrast Jeffrey's latent fingerprint with the unidentified fingerprints. The comparison created a sense of anticipation. But it didn't take long for things to become clear. The prints were identical. The name Jeffrey Todd Cito was finally given to the John Doe from Loleta. Mixed feelings of relief and sorrow were triggered by the revelation. Jeffrey's story, once tattered and disjointed, was starting to build up. However, it was a bittersweet occasion for his family, particularly Cheryl. Finally, they had access to the solutions they had been seeking. Jeffrey Todd Cito was a real person with goals, aspirations, and experiences that made him who he was. He was not just a name in a cold case file. Jeffrey was born in 1963, but very little is known about his early years. His parents' exact names and the location of his birth are unknown, which heightens the mystery surrounding his life story. What we do know, however, paints a picture of a person who, like many others, traveled through life's ups and downs. Maybe he pursued his passions with zeal, or maybe he had quiet moments to himself to think about the bigger issues in life. The lack of specifics allows our imagination to wander, allowing us to picture Jeffrey engaging in commonplace activities, giggling at a joke, or just taking in a peaceful sunset. The family, understandably distraught upon learning Jeffrey's identity, used their sorrow to pay tribute to him in the best way they knew how. After being separated from Jeffrey for such a long time, they were now given the difficult but necessary task of bringing him home. They started coordinating with the coroner's office of Humboldt County to work out the specifics of releasing Jeffrey's remains. The Cito family decided to bury Jeffrey with his deceased relatives. As they gathered, holding on to one another for support and vigor, there was a tangible sense of unity. With a gesture of love, respect, and a profound sense of closure, they hoped to give Jeffrey a dignified send-off. The California Department of Justice, the NA Lab, Othram, and the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office worked tirelessly to bring the Cito family some much-needed closure. They worked exceptionally well together to solve this mysterious case and to determine what happened to Jeffrey Todd Cito. The Humboldt County Sheriff's Office continues to collaborate closely with Othram and the California Department of Justice, acknowledging the value of cutting-edge DNA technology. Together, they are going over a number of cold cases in an effort to shed light on those which are still cloaked in mystery. There are still some pieces needed to complete the picture of Jeffrey's tragic death. Mike Fridley, the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office cold case investigator, is still in charge of these inquiries. If anyone has information about Jeffrey's actions or whereabouts in the days before his tragic death, they are urged to get in touch with him. His direct number is 707-441-3024. Your bit of knowledge, no matter how small, could be the missing piece that gives another family waiting for answers closure. Keep in mind that it is our responsibility as a group to support one another and see that justice is done. Do you believe that there is still more to learn about Jeffrey's case? Case of Michelle Missy. In the quiet suburbs of Southern California, the disappearance and tragic death of Michelle Yvette Missy Avila deeply shook a close-knit community. Her story is one of friendship, betrayal, and a devastating loss that left an indelible mark on those who knew her. The vanishing of Missy Avila caused shockwaves in the community, as friends, family, and law enforcement mobilized in a desperate search to find her. The quest to uncover the truth behind her disappearance would reveal a disturbing tale of betrayal among those she trusted. Missy was known for her bright smile and caring nature, a young woman with dreams of a promising future. As the details surrounding her disappearance emerged, the heartbreaking story of friendships turned sinister captivated the nation's attention. This is the story of Michelle Yvette Missy Avila, her whose life was tragically cut short. Missy was born on February 8, 1968 and grew up in our later Los Angeles. She lived with her mother and 3 brothers and attended San Fernando High School with her 2 best friends, Karen Severson and Laura Doyle. Missy and Karen had been best friends since they were 8 years old, but the girls started to drift apart once they entered high school. Missy was very beautiful and had very long hair, which she loved, and she was quite popular and well-liked by most of her peers. Karen and Laura began to feel envious of the attention Missy received from others, especially from boys. During Missy's sophomore year of high school, a rumor began to spread that claimed Missy had been engaging in sexual relationships with several boys, all of whom had girlfriends. This rumor prompted a group of girls to confront Missy outside of school and assault her severely. As soon as Missy got home, her parents pressed charges against the ringleader of the attack, Sonia Bond. Missy was expected to appear in court on October 8, 1985 to testify against Sonia, but she would sadly never get that opportunity. Earlier in September, Missy had a falling out with both Karen and Laura due to the same rumor that had been spread a year earlier, in which Missy was accused of having sexual relationships with her friends' boyfriends. This time, the 2 girls involved were her best friends, Karen and Laura. Missy began dating a boy named Randy earlier in their junior year, but their relationship only lasted around a month before Missy broke things off, as she couldn't stand his constant partying. Not long after, Karen and Randy started dating and moved in together. However, Randy still had feelings for Missy, and Karen saw him flirting with her. Missy turned Randy down and told him she wasn't interested in rekindling their relationship. Missy also tried to be a good friend by telling Karen she should consider ending the relationship with Randy and try to find a better boyfriend. This angered Karen, and she and Laura spread rumors again and decided to confront Missy at one of the parks in their neighborhood. Missy tried pleading with them, telling them she would never betray either of them like that, and that these were the same rumors that were spread the year prior. Eyewitnesses claimed that Karen was seen shouting at Missy, threatening her with a broken beer bottle, pushing her to the ground, and slapping her before she and Laura stormed off. This incident occurred 10 days before Missy's murder. Not long after that incident, Laura expressed regret and contacted Missy, and the 2 of them decided to put everything behind them and continue with their friendship. However, Karen was still avoiding Missy until October 1st, when she contacted Missy and sincerely apologized to her about everything that had escalated between them. This meant a lot to Missy, as she had started to miss her friends, and the trio made plans to hang out at Stonehurst Park later that same day. On October 1st, 1985, Missy told her mom that she made plans to hang out with her friends, and her mom gave her permission to go, but she had to be back home by 6 p.m. Missy went outside and waited for Laura to pick her up. After Laura picked her up, the girls drove around for a while before making their way to Stonehurst Park, where they parked the car and waited for Karen to show up. A few minutes passed, and Karen pulled into the parking lot with their other friend, Eva, in the passenger seat. That's when things took a turn for the worse for Missy. When Karen entered the parking lot, she parked extremely close to Laura's car, rolled down her window and began yelling at Laura. Laura also rolled down her window and started yelling back at Karen. Missy and Eva just sat there, shocked watching their friends shout abusive things at each other. Missy had no idea what they were arguing about. Suddenly, Karen backed up and sped out of the parking lot, and Laura followed her for 45 minutes. They drove recklessly north of the city and into the mountains, both girls driving with such extreme anger that Missy and Eva were begging the girls to calm down and pull the cars over. The girls drove right into a parking lot that led to a huge forest. Laura and Karen got out of their cars, confronted each other, and continued to fight. Missy got out of the car in an attempt to stop her friends from fighting. However, as soon as she left the car, Karen and Laura suddenly ceased their argument, turned their attention to Missy, and approached her aggressively. They got so close to Missy that she was unable to re-enter the car or move away from it. Karen then laughed at Missy and informed her that they were not actually fighting and had no animosity towards each other, but rather they were angry with Missy. They revealed that the entire situation was a ploy to lure Missy into the woods so that they could confront her and teach her a lesson. They then shouted at Missy and explained that they had spread the rumors because they knew for a fact that she had slept with their boyfriends and they were not going to let her get away with it. Missy tried pleading with them, telling them again that she would never do anything like that she never slept with anyone, but they wouldn't listen. When Missy started to shut down, the girls grabbed her and pushed her away from the car and towards a trail that led into the forest. Given that Missy was quite petite compared to the other girls, being only 4 feet 10 and 95 pounds, while Karen was 5 feet 2 and over 200 pounds, and Laura was 5 feet 6 and 135 pounds, Missy was unable to defend herself against the constant pushes by the two girls as they forced her to walk further down the trail. Eva was in the car during the entire altercation. She finally got out of the car and started walking behind the group. Eva was not involved in anything the girls did in the forest, and she didn't even know why she was brought along in the first place. When the group was out of view from the parking lot and deep into the forest, Laura stopped and faced Missy, who was crying helplessly and scared, and punched her right in the face. As soon as Laura started punching her, Karen joined in, and within seconds, Missy was on the ground, being beaten, punched, and stomped on. When they stopped, Laura pulled out a knife, grabbed Missy by the hair, and started cutting off chunks of her hair. They did this intentionally because they knew how much Missy loved her beautiful long hair. Karen wanted to join in on the hair cutting, but since she didn't have a knife, she just started pulling out chunks with her hands, while Eva stood there, watching it all happen. After they had finished that activity, they produced restraints, bound Missy's arms behind her back, and gagged her. Since there was a river around 10 feet away from their location, Laura walked into the stream, looked directly at Missy, began running her hands through the water, gave Missy a smirk, and started taunting her, asking her to come into the water with her. When Missy did not move, Karen seized her, forcefully stood her up and shoved her towards the river, causing her to fall down the hill. Since her arms were restrained behind her back, her face slammed down onto the ground, and she rolled up to the river. Laura and Karen then grabbed her and dragged her into the water. That's when Eva hastily ran back up the trail to the cars. Upon arriving at the cars, Eva realized that both vehicles were locked and too far to fetch assistance. She reluctantly started walking back down the trail until she heard a terrifying scream. She stopped, turned around, and swiftly ran back to the cars, where she lay on the ground in a fetal position and waited for approximately an hour for the girls to return. Eventually, she saw Laura and Karen, who were dripping wet and smiling and laughing. But Missy was not with them. Laura and Karen were holding Missy's body in the water that was 8 inches deep. The scream that Eva heard happened when Missy was briefly able to get her head above the water, but then Karen grabbed her head and pushed it back into the water. When the girls realized that Missy was near death, they released her, ran to a large log and dropped it on her head. The girls then left the forest, got into their cars with Eva, and went home. For hours later, Laura called Missy's mother, Irene Avila, claiming that she had dropped Missy off with 3 boys driving a blue Camaro after getting gas. Laura said she returned to the location, but Missy and the boys had already left. On October 4th, 1985, Missy's body was found face down in a stream in Big Two Hanger Canyon in Angeles National Forest, 3 days later by a group of hikers. Police found that she had been forcibly drowned in 8 inches of water and her waist-length hair had been cut off. A 4-foot log was found on top of her body and cigarettes. Beer and men's overalls were found near where her body was discovered. The girls told Missy's parents and the detectives that Missy had gone off with 2 men in a blue Camaro before she disappeared, which made the random items around the crime scene seem more plausible. This false claim sent the detectives on a fruitless investigation for the non-existent men for 3 years. Irene later said she had no reason to suspect Karen or Laura were involved in her daughter's death because both of them attended Missy's funeral, and Laura sent the family a sympathy card with $20. Karen also moved in with Missy's family for a long time, outwardly showing support and trying to help catch the killers, all while closely monitoring the investigation and attempting to divert the investigators from her own involvement. Karen was intensely focused on the murder, frequently visiting Missy's grave, covering the walls of her room with pictures of Missy and newspaper articles about the crime, and repeatedly returning to the creek where Missy's body was discovered. At one point, she even told Irene that she had seen Missy's ghost. After 3 years, on July 26, 1988, Eva Chirumbolo, the other teenager who had taken the 45-minute drive into the mountains, finally came forward and told the police everything that had happened. She explained the rumors, the falling out, the anger, and the jealousy, as well as the details of the murder. Eva said she took so long to come forward because the other 2 girls had threatened to kill her if she ever revealed what she had seen. In March 1990, Karen and Laura were convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. The jurors were not convinced that the murder was planned, and they rejected the first-degree murder charge. Karen Severson was released from prison on December 9, 2011, after serving 21.5 years, and Laura Doyle was released from prison in December 2012, after serving 22 years. Karen Severson attempted to profit from her crime by writing a memoir about the murder and her prison life, but the book did not do well. She also made a deal for a movie to be made about it, but Avila's family sued her in 2015, seeking to take the profits from the sales. As a result, the state of California passed Missy's law, requiring entities who are helping publish works made by criminals to contact the families of the victims about the said works. Missy's story has sparked conversations about the impact of bullying, the complexities of teenage relationships, and the importance of fostering a culture of empathy and kindness. Community initiatives and support networks have emerged to provide resources and support for those affected by similar experiences. As we remember Missy, we honor her memory by working to create a world where friendships are built on trust and compassion. Her legacy serves as a reminder that every individual deserves respect, kindness, and the opportunity to live a life free from harm. In the end, Michelle Yvette Missy Avila's legacy will be one of resilience and hope. May her memory inspire us all to stand up against bullying, support those affected by betrayal, and work towards a future where understanding and empathy prevail. A town located in Fairfax County, Virginia, with a population of more than 24,000 people, it is the largest of 3 incorporated towns in the county. It was founded in 1958 by Commander William Lewis Herndon, an American naval explorer. At present, Herndon boasts of many art centers, galleries, and museums. In addition to this, its scenic landscapes offer perfect spots for many fun outdoor activities. Isolde Barabler was a 37-year-old woman from Kensington, Maryland. On September 8, 1987, construction workers who were around a motel in Herndon, known as Dulles des Inn, came upon her naked body on the ground of the motel's parking lots. It was a sight that shook them to the bone. Upon closer inspection, it was discovered that she was not breathing. An emergency call was immediately placed to notify authorities about the disturbing scene, and in a matter of minutes, Fairfax County Police Department detectives arrived with paramedics. They immediately secured the area and tried to resuscitate Adler, but all their efforts proved in vain. She was dead. After ensuring that they had done all they could to bring her back to life, the body was transported to the hospital for autopsy. Finding her body in the parking lot and in such a state was a mystery to detectives. Questions were asked, but they couldn't get anything tangible that could be of help. It was as if no one had seen or heard anything. Surprisingly, Adler's vehicle was found by the detectives abandoned on Dulles Toll Road. This is an area which is about a half-mile away from the motel. The reason why she had abandoned her vehicle remained unclear, and detectives could only speculate. They believed she had encountered problems with her car, and due to this, she had left it behind. The autopsy that was conducted revealed that she has been hit with an object in the head, and this had caused her skull to fracture, led to bleeding inside her brain. All this information was not solid enough for detectives to work with. They knew that there were still a lot of gaps that needed to be filled. Who her killer was remained a question that could not be answered. The investigation into her death was leading nowhere, and detectives from the Major Crime Bureau's Cold Case Squad, who were assigned to the case, grew more frustrated with each passing day. Adler's body was eventually laid to rest, and whoever killed her continued walking around freely. 15 years later, this same killer would strike again. This time around, the victim was a 19-year-old teenager by the name of Jennifer Landry, and this second homicide occurred in Mount Rainier, Maryland, which is about an hour drive away from the town of Herndon. Jennifer was originally from Randolph, Massachusetts, and on July 31st, 2002, she suddenly went missing without a trace. A few weeks after this, on August 15th, 2002, her body was found around 9 a.m. in the 3600 block of Oak Lane in a wooded area. Just like Adler, she was also found naked. Apart from this, another thing that caught the attention of Prince George's County police detectives who responded to the scene was the electrical cable cord that was wrapped around her neck, hands, back, and feet. There were several injuries on her body, and one that stood out was the gaping wound on her neck. It was obvious that whoever killed her had slashed her neck open. An autopsy later revealed that she had also been strangled. In addition to this, there was also a stab wound on her abdomen. Detectives did not also fail to notice that tattoo on her left ankle. It was of a kangaroo wearing boxing gloves. Her body was eventually removed from the area, and an investigation into her death began immediately. This was undertaken by Sergeant Greg McDonald and some other detectives of the Prince George's County Police Department. However, the investigation was hindered by something. Jennifer could not be positively identified. With no name and no idea where she came from, there was little that detectives could do, and the investigation slowed to a crawl. Sketches of her, as well as the tattoo on her body, were released to the public. She was described by the police as a white blonde with blue eyes and a height of 5 feet 5 inches. All of these were done with the hopes that someone would recognize her and come forward with vital information, but nothing came up. Things would remain like this until June 2005, when a police officer from Massachusetts recognized the kangaroo tattoo. He notified the Prince George's County Police Department of this, and through fingerprint analysis, they were able to finally confirm Jennifer's identity. It was a step in the right direction, but detectives were still in the dark about who her killer was. Nothing else came forth for a long time, and the case went cold. In 2010, the Mount Rainier Police Department received an unexpected letter that helped ignite renewed interest in Jennifer's murder. The letter had come from an inmate that was serving life imprisonment in the Red Onion State Prison located in Virginia. The name of the inmate was Charles Helm. According to the content of the letter, he claimed to have knowledge about the death of Jennifer. This was enough to pique curiosity in the minds of detectives, and they wasted no time in pursuing what they felt was a potential lead. They met up with Charles in the prison where he was and tried setting up an interview with him, but much to their surprise, he declined to speak with them. It wasn't something they had considered would occur, and they had no idea what had prompted this sudden change. There was really nothing that could be done since they could not force him to talk. However, they busied themselves with unraveling as much as they could about him, and a look at his criminal history revealed that he had a really dark past. Charles was in prison for the murder of a 37-year-old mother of 2 by the name of Patricia Bentley. Before her death, she and Charles had been in a romantic relationship. To make ends meet, she worked as a bus driver for London County School. Her oldest son was named Anthony, was 16 at the time, while the younger one was only 8. Around November 2001, Charles moved into her house at Brookfield and began living there. This living arrangement would not last for long because the relationship hit the rocks. By January 2002, Charles packed his bags, moved out, and went on to live with another woman. However, for some reason, He left some of his clothes behind at Patricia's house and still occasionally went back there to make use of her treadmill. Patricia was obviously not pleased about this because at some point, she poured paint on his car during one of his such visits. On April 6, 2002, a friend of Patricia by the name of Alicia Robinson realized that she had not heard from her. The two had planned to go shopping on that day, and it seemed as if Patricia had totally forgotten. At the time, Patricia's two sons were spending the weekend at Rose Bentley's place in Centerville. Rose was Patricia's mother. When Alicia called Patricia's phone to remind her of the plan, she discovered that it was unreachable. This worried her, since it was unusual for such a thing to happen. She immediately called Patricia's mother at Centerville to inform her of the situation. After this, she got into her car and drove down to Centerville to pick up Anthony. She did this because she had a spare key to his mother's house. On getting back to Patricia's house at Brookfield, Theo lighted from the car and made their way to the front door of the house. This was unlocked by Anthony. In the bedroom, they found Alicia face down on the floor. Bruises covered different parts of her body, and the phone and extension cord that had been used to strangle her to death laid a few feet away. The autopsy that was later conducted on her also revealed that she had been hit in the head by an object. Charles immediately became a prime suspect in the murder. However, he denied having a hand in her death. He also claimed he had not seen her for a long time. The truth was eventually discerned with the help of forensic analysis. His DNA was found on her breast and abdomen. In addition to this, cell phone data placed him close to her residence on April 5th, which was a day before her body was discovered. With all these out in the open, Charles can no longer deny the truth. He was arrested on September 18, 2002 and locked up to await trial. The first trial ended up being rendered invalid before a verdict was reached. A second trial was also conducted, but it went the same way as the first. However, the third trial saw the jurors finding him guilty of first-degree murder, and on October 3, 2002, he was handed a life sentence. Detectives would also discover that Patricia's murder was not the only crime from his past. In 1966, he married a woman by the name of Denise Custis. However, the marriage did not last for long due to his habit of physically abusing her. At the end of 1996, she packed her bags and left him for good. But for some reason, he came after her the following year and beat her so badly that she ended up passing out and also suffered a fracture to her cheekbone. As if that weren't enough, he then took her in his car to a motel where they both checked in. But after seeing that she wasn't in a good state and was bleeding from the mouth, he drove her to the hospital for medical treatments. Charles was eventually charged with assault and kidnapping, and served time from 1997 to 2001 in a federal prison in Lompoc, California. It was after this release from prison that he met Patricia and started a relationship with her. After uncovering all of these details about Charles's past, detectives were simply astonished. They did not doubt that he truly knew something about Jennifer's death. They felt that if anyone was to point them in the right direction about the murder, it was definitely going to be him. But since he had chosen to remain tight-lipped, they could only wait patiently and hope that he changed his mind. In 2017, almost 7 years after the first letter, Charles wrote another letter to detectives. The content was similar to that of the first one. When detectives reached out to him again, he refused to talk. This was a very frustrating period for the detectives as they felt they were being led in circles, but they did not relent. He initially refused to speak to our detectives. Prince George's County Police Chief Malik Aziz said, "Detectives didn't give up. They tried again to interview him in 2021. This time he agreed. A date was chosen for the interview, and in September 2021, Charles finally sat down to talk with detectives. During the interrogation, he held nothing back and revealed that he was the one that killed Jennifer. He told the detectives that he had picked her up from Washington, D.C. after she had agreed to sleep with him in exchange for some cash. He then drove her to Oak Lane and Mount Rainier where he killed her, and left her body where it had been found. After this confession, detectives knew that they had finally solved the case, but they could not help being shocked by what they had just heard. However, that was not all. Charles also hinted at the 1987 murder of Adler, who was found in the parking lots. However, he did not further elaborate on it. Jennifer's surviving family members were contacted and given the news that her killer had finally been found. In October 2021, and barely a month after Charles's confession, detectives from Fairfax County Police decided to speak to him again. They wanted to know what he knew about the 1987 murder of Adler. When he was interrogated, he admitted to also killing Adler, and even went as far as giving details that only the killer would have known. Detectives were stunned. They could not believe their ears. It was a big day all around. Fairfax County Commonwealth Attorney Steve Descano said, "I was personally really happy and relieved and grateful that we can bring this to a close," he added. In January 2022, Fairfax County Grand Jury formally charged Charles with the murder of Adler. A week before this, Prince George's County Cold Case Unit detectives also issued an arrest warrant for him for Jennifer's murder. Sadly, both of Ige's parents died never knowing what happened to their daughter. Fairfax County Police Chief Kevin Davis said, "We hope this indictment brings some sense of closure to her surviving family members and friends," he added. Descano also said the following during a press conference that was held after Charles's indictment. "In a case like this, he's already serving a life sentence. He's not going to ever walk the streets free again. Barring some incredibly unusual circumstance that's out of our control, it's not about a sentence. It's my opinion that we have an obligation to a community, to the family of a victim, to really take these cases seriously and do them the same way. Because when the justice system is functioning as it should, and particularly crimes as serious as this one, our work is really more than about the length of the sentence. It is about what we say to the community and how the community feels." In December 2022, Charles pleaded guilty to the murder of Adler and was handed another life sentence. An agreement has been reached to transfer him to Maryland, where he will also plead guilty to Jennifer's murder. This would seem as being slammed with another life sentence. He is also expected to serve the remainder of his life sentence in Maryland. At the moment, detectives are trying to determine if he had other victims. "We now know even more about the danger this killer presented to the entire National Capital Region," Davis said. "Now, we know he killed in '87. He killed twice in 2002. So we're working backwards now." The case of Lucy Landry. Lucy Davies was born in 1971 in Rhondda, a county in England. She was the daughter of Roger and Andrea Davies and had a younger sister named Anna. The family lived in a small, tight-knit community of socially purposed housing, surrounded by stunning mountain scenery. Lucy had a happy and carefree childhood, bonding closely with her sister, who shared similar interests. Her parents often mentioned Lucy's infectious joy, which made her a standout student in primary school. Known for her outgoing and likable personality, Lucy quickly won over her teachers and classmates. With her undeniable beauty, she became one of the most popular and admired girls in school. Lucy and her sister Anna shared a passion for ponies, which led their father to enroll them in the local riding club. This experience taught them discipline and showcased their talent, eventually earning them the right to participate in various events and competitions. By the time Lucy started secondary school, she had developed into an exceptional rider. In addition to her riding skills, Lucy was also a talented musician. She took flute and piano lessons, dedicating long hours to practice and master both instruments. Her hard work paid off, and soon she had a comprehensive understanding of classical music. This led to her acceptance into a youth orchestra and her school's choir group. During this time, Lucy developed a romantic interest in Gareth Jenkins, but she kept it a secret. After completing secondary school in 1989, Lucy decided to pursue a music-related career. She enrolled in the University of Warwick to study for a bachelor's degree, hoping to become a music teacher. However, she soon realized that the degree program wasn't what she had expected. Her passion for music remained, but she didn't enjoy the direction of the program. As a result, Lucy changed her plan and opted to study urban planning instead. Around this time, Lucy met Graham McAllister, and they soon discovered that they shared a similar outlook on life, including a passion for art and common interests. A key aspect of their bond was their matching sense of humor. Their relationship developed naturally, and as they made plans for the future, Lucy decided to introduce GRA to her parents, Roger and Andrea. The meeting went well, and Lucy's parents were convinced that GRA was the right person for their daughter. In fact, they were so confident in their relationship that they bought Lucy a house in Coventry, northwest of London. This gift not only provided Lucy with a stable home, free from the uncertainties of renting and moving, but also reflected their wish for her to start a family. Shortly after moving in, invited GRA to live with her, and they continued their studies together. In 1995, they welcomed their first child, James. Lucy decided to take a break from university to care for him, while GRA continued his studies and worked the night shift at the city's postal sorting office. Over time, this arrangement took a toll on Lucy, who felt bored and isolated at home, caring for their child and often separated from her partner for long periods. To alleviate her boredom, Lucy turned to internet chat rooms, seeking to meet new people and find some distraction. One night, Lucy engaged in lively conversations in various online chat rooms, where she encountered Harold Landry, a 53-year-old American from Louisiana. Growing up in a financially struggling family with a dozen siblings, Harold knew from an early age that he had to rely on his own efforts and determination to succeed. To escape poverty, he dedicated himself to hard work from a young age. His big break came when he realized that the key to success in the oil business wasn't owning wells, but providing essential infrastructure to well owners. Consequently, he founded a company specializing in designing and manufacturing hydraulic equipment for major oil companies in the southern United States. As he had predicted, the business made him incredibly wealthy, eventually earning him billionaire status. By then, Harold split his time between his central hobbies and a property on KML Island in Mexico. He had been married and divorced twice, with children from these unions, whose exact number and identities remained private. One thing was certain, however: Harold ensured that his children lacked nothing. A significant event took place in 1992, when Harold, now single, met a woman 20 years younger who was married. Despite her marital status, Harold used his charms to win her over, undeterred by her family's or husband's potential opposition. On February 6, 1994, Harold took her on an outing in New Orleans, hiring a babysitter to watch her children. After their evening together, Harold dropped his lover off at home and offered to drive the babysitter back to her own place. Surprisingly, no one seemed worried that her husband would discover the infidelity and react angrily. However, that's precisely what happened. Outside his wife's residence, Chris Price had been keeping a close eye on her every move. When the third party said goodbye to her, Chris followed him in his car. A short while later, Harold noticed he was being tailed. Acting on instinct, Harold opened the glove compartment, pulled out a firearm he normally kept there, and prepared for a confrontation. When they both stopped at a red light, the situation escalated. According to the babysitter's account, Harold brandished the revolver at Chris and fired. The bullet severely injured Chris, severing an artery in his neck and damaging a nerve connected to his vocal cord. Chris collapsed on the pavement, but luckily there was a hospital nearby, allowing him to receive prompt medical attention. Doctors were able to save his life. Harold was arrested and charged with attempted murder. His trial took place in 1997. The defense attorney argued in the opening statement that Harold's actions were the result of a tragic and sordid affair involving Chris, and that he had acted out of fear and in self-defense. This strategy led the jury, composed of 4 men and 8 women, to convict Harold of the lesser offense of aggravated assault. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, after an appeal, Harold was granted probation in exchange for a $500 fine and community service. Although he had hoped to be fully exonerated, he thanked his lawyer, Pat, for his efforts. The 2 men subsequently became close friends. After reaching a confidential agreement with Chris, Harold moved to Covington, where he lived a life of luxury, free from financial worries. When he started chatting with Lucy, he was open about his past, sharing stories about his jobs, romantic escapades, and legal issues. However, instead of deterring Lucy, this honesty only strengthened her attraction to him. The two began a captivating online romance, with Harold promising her a highly desirable lifestyle. Eventually, His persistence and persuasive abilities convinced Lucy to end her relationship with GRA, clearing the way for Harold to pursue her, without any rival claiming his attention. In the early 2000s, Harold traveled to England to meet Lucy, and she took the opportunity to introduce him to her parents, Roger and Andrea, as her boyfriend. Although they were surprised by the significant age difference, they respected their daughter's decisions and did not object to the relationship. Harold felt fulfilled and fortunate to share his life with Lucy, and he spared no effort to surprise her, whether with luxurious gifts or anything else she desired. In fact, by then, he was so in love that he was already planning to propose marriage. However, he wanted to do it in an ideal setting. To achieve this goal, Harold took Lucy, her son James, and GRA on a trip to Mexico, a place that had become his favorite destination in the world. His longtime friend Pat, who had been his attorney in the past trial, also had an apartment close to his residence, which added to the feeling of comfort. Initially, Harold bought a diamond ring and shared the news with enthusiasm with Pat. However, Pat harbored certain suspicions about Lucy, and as the days passed, he found it strange that she had dedicated a good part of her time in GRA's company. Despite this, Harold was oblivious to it and ultimately proceeded with his plan to propose. Lucy happily accepted the proposal, and in mid-2003, the couple celebrated their union. Shortly after, Harold surprised Lucy by buying a $1 million property in an exclusive Worcester neighborhood. In this peaceful rural setting, their marriage got off to a prosperous start, helped by their excellent neighbors, Rachel Clark and Stephen Kennedy, with whom they formed a close friendship. Soon, Lucy gave birth to their first daughter, Harriet, which filled both her and Harold with joy. From then on, he devoted himself to the little girl with unwavering energy and commitment. He also maintained a loving relationship with James, treating him like his own son. As time passed, Lucy's workload increased and her mood began to deteriorate in proportion to Harold's demands. He expected her to constantly adapt to his preferences and obey his requests without question. Lucy, however, had different expectations. This led to rising tensions between them. Lucy was outspoken and unafraid to express her opinions, but Harold was unwilling to compromise. Given their volatile personalities, their arguments frequently escalated into intense fights, followed by reconciliations once the conflict had subsided. The constant disputes that lasted for hours became a familiar background noise in the lives of Rachel and Stephen. They knew that Lucy and Harold's alcoholism fueled their arguments and complaints, which often led to days of not speaking to each other. Lucy reconnected with Gareth, an old friend from secondary school, and they spent hours catching up, occasionally interrupted by their own commitments. One evening, after Harold fell asleep, Lucy stayed on her computer, and it dawned on him that she was unhappy and looking for a distraction, possibly even a replacement, just like she had found him. In the autumn of 2009, Lucy invited Gareth to stay with her. Meanwhile, Harold returned to England, hoping to salvage their marriage. But as soon as he arrived home, Lucy asked him for a divorce. Initially, Harold was devastated, but after a few weeks, he started a new relationship with a woman he met online. Alongside their budding new relationships, divorce negotiations were progressing. And as is often the case, new disputes arose, particularly regarding the family home. Lucy's expectation was to retain the house, thereby guaranteeing a stable living arrangement for their children. However, Harold was adamant that this was not up for discussion. His proposed solution involved offering her financial compensation to purchase a more modest apartment independently. Simultaneously, he made the decision to entirely remove her from his will. Lucy was furious when she learned about her still husband's latest decisions. Her intense hatred towards him led her to share every detail about Harold's past with her son James, holding nothing back. Amidst the tension and complicated situation, Gareth invited her to take a break and spend a few days with him in Wales. Both Lucy and Harold had a serious drinking problem, and their arguments were becoming increasingly violent, leaving their children to suffer in a toxic environment. On the afternoon of February 1st, 2010, Harold had several glasses of wine. When Stephen returned from work, he found a notification that his package had been delivered to the wrong address, the Landrys. Harold invited Stephen in and offered him a glass of wine. This led to a ridiculous argument with Lucy over a piece of furniture she wanted to buy for their upcoming move. The argument quickly turned physical, and in the chaos, Harold grabbed a kitchen utensil and hit Lucy on the cheek. James rushed to the scene of the altercation and found his mother, Lucy, badly injured. He immediately called the police and then turned his attention to ensuring his younger sister's safety. Shortly after, Lucy, realizing she needed help, left the house with her children. Her first thought was to seek refuge at Stephen's house, which was nearby. As she headed in that direction, Harold caught up with her and attacked her with a knife, inflicting multiple injuries. He then left her lying under a bush in the garden, abandoning her. Stephen, alerted by Lucy's screams, rushed outside and found her just a few steps away. Initially, he thought she was unconscious, but quickly realized the gravity of the situation. The police responded promptly to the emergency call and arrived on the scene. They called for paramedics and searched the surrounding area for Harold, but only found the terrified children hiding in the backyard. The paramedics worked quickly to treat Lucy and rushed her to the hospital, where her heart unfortunately stopped beating shortly after arrival. Harold visited Rachel's house and confessed to her that a terrible event had occurred, but he didn't provide any additional information. He handed her 3 bank drafts worth a total of $40,000. Some cash, the keys to his car, and several signed blank checks. After that, he headed back home. By then, multiple police patrols were searching for him. They eventually found him walking along the road and arrested him. Roger and Andrea were consumed by grief when they heard the devastating news. In a statement released by the police, they requested that people respect their privacy during this incredibly difficult time following the loss of their daughter. From that point on, their focus shifted to taking care of their grandchildren. The forensic examination revealed that Lucy's death was caused by multiple stab wounds to the chest. With this evidence, combined with James' eyewitness testimony, Harold was charged with murder on February 5, 2010, when he appeared in court. The trial took place in early February 2011, presided over by Judge David Fawson. Unlike previous instances, Pat did not serve as Harold's defender. Instead, attorney Andy Childs took on the role. Despite the challenging task ahead, Childs argued that Harold had been provoked by his wife's intense anger, leaving him no choice but to react as he did. During his emotional testimony, Harold expressed his love for Lucy and regretted his actions. Following the strategy outlined by his lawyer, Harold admitted to involuntary manslaughter, claiming that Lucy had driven him to his limits. To emphasize the brutality of the case, the prosecution presented a detailed animation in court, recreating the multiple injuries the victim suffered. This graphic presentation shocked those present in the courtroom. Ultimately, on February 24, 2011, the jury delivered a verdict after less than 4 hours of deliberation. They found Harold Landry guilty of murdering his 38-year-old wife, Lucy Landry, when he was 64 years old. The next day, the judge imposed the sentence. He strongly condemned Harold's actions, calling them indescribable and unforgivable. The judge rejected Harold's claims that Lucy may have provoked him, seeing them as a desperate attempt to avoid blame. As a result, Harold received a life sentence with a minimum term of 16 years before being eligible for parole. By the time he would be eligible, he would be over 80 years old. Lucy's loved ones expressed gratitude, not only for the resolution of the case, but also for the judge's comments, which they felt accurately reflected their own emotions. They acknowledged that the sentence brought some sense of relief from their pain, although they recognized that no length of sentence could restore Lucy's life, and they would need to come to terms with this difficult reality. Harold, on the other hand, maintained his claim of innocence, stating that he hoped to appeal the sentence in the future. The city of Chicopee, which lies to the southwest side of the state of Massachusetts. It was originally part of Springfield and was once prominently a mill town. Currently, it boasts a population of more than 55,000 people. The city is famous for its annual 2-day air show at the Westover Air Reserve Base, which welcomes more than 100,000 visitors yearly. Betty Lou Zukowski. Betty Lou was born on June 2, 1955 to Stanley and Mildred Zukowski in Chicopee. She was an only child and so was very precious to her parents. Around the age of 10, she was in 5th grade and was attending an all-girls private Catholic school known as Ursuline Academy. Betty was described as a smart, kind, funny, adventurous, and energetic girl by her friends. Betty, Lou, and I met while in the same classrooms at Ursuline Academy on Madison Avenue in Springfield. Lisa, childhood friend of Betty, said, "We were both chatterboxes. We were both humorous. And although we were not sarcastic, our humor would sometimes be mistaken as sarcasm." During her free time, Betty would rather explore her surroundings than sit at home and play with dolls. She simply had a curious mindset that was insatiable. One of the places that interested her were some caves that were dug along the bank of the Chicopee River. Another place she was fond of exploring was Wesson Park, which was a small urban forest located at the corner of Wilbraham Road and Roosevelt Avenue. It was one of her favorite locations, and she would often take long walks with her friends around the area. Betty was enjoying every bit of her childhood and had no worries in the world. The future looked so bright for her, but things would take a dark turn. The disappearance on the evening of May 26, 1966. Betty was at home with her parents when the telephone rang. Betty answered the call and spoke with someone for a while. After the phone call, she told Mildred, her mother, that a friend had called and she was going to her place to get ice cream. Mildred did not object to this, perhaps because she was used to her daughter's wandering. In no time, Betty began to make preparations to leave home. She put on a green checkered blouse and a blue jacket. She also wore blue pants. On her feet, she had on white sneakers. After getting dressed, she said goodbye to her mother and left the house. This was around 6 in the evening, and that was the last time that her family saw her. If Mildred had known that her daughter would never make it back home alive, she would have never let her step out of the house. Minutes turned into hours, and Betty was still not back from her outing. Mildred and Stanley got increasingly worried, but kept on hoping that their daughter would step into the house at any moment, but that never happened. At around 11:15 p.m., they called the Chicopee Police Department and reported that Betty had not returned home. However, they told the police not to make a public statement because they believed that she had gone to stay with a relative or one of her friends. Officers, however, began searching for her immediately. They went to the homes of friends and relatives which she normally frequented, but she was not there. Her friends told Lieutenant Armand Morgan of Juvenile Bureau and Detective Paul Balthazar about the caves at the bank of the Chicopee River, which she liked to visit. But when officers combed through the area, they found nothing. 2 days after she went missing, police finally told the public about her disappearance. A description of the clothes she wore on the day she went missing was given out to the public. More questions were asked, and at one point, it was discovered that the friend Betty had told her mother she was going to meet was non-existent. It became obvious that she had lied so she could get out of the house, but where exactly she had gone to was a question no one could provide an answer to. They could not also figure out the individual who had called her and made her leave the house. With each passing day, everyone feared the worst. However, they kept praying that she would be found in one piece. On May 31st, 1966, 5 days after Betty went missing without a trace, a father and his 9-year-old son were out fishing on the bank of the Westfield River. This area is about 5 miles away from Betty's home, and it was well known to the residents of West Springfield. The spot where the father and son were fishing was overgrown with brush, and so was hidden from the road. A short distance away from where they were was a drainage sewer which emptied its content into the river. Suddenly, one of their lines hooked onto something in the river. It was an exciting few seconds as they tried to reel in whatever it was. They could feel that it was huge, but their excitement soon gave way to disappointments when a bunch of clothing surfaced instead of the huge fish that they had expected. At first, they thought it was a log of wood that had been covered by clothes, but after it was dragged closer to shore, they discovered that it was the body of a young girl. She was fully clothed, and there was no doubt in their minds that she was beyond saving. They were shocked by what was before them and immediately rushed to inform police about the finding. When detectives got to the scene, they secured the area and proceeded to carry out their investigation. The girl's arm and face were covered in mud and were also badly bruised. It looked like she had been beaten with something, but detectives did not want to quickly jump to conclusions before an autopsy was carried out. Soon after, the body was taken out of the area for an autopsy. Betty's parents were also informed that the girl had been found in the river and that they were asked to come down to identify the body in case it was their daughter's. When Betty's parents got the news, they hoped and prayed that it would not turn out to be her. When they finally got to where the body was laid, they discovered to their horror that it was Betty. She was in the same clothes she had worn when she left the home on the last day she was seen. Stanley and Mildred were beyond devastated, and it felt as if the world had come crashing down. The news of Betty's death spread like wildfire, and the entire community was shocked by it. Lisa, whose family had moved from Springfield to Connecticut 4 months before Betty died, also got to hear about the terrible news. I learned of Betty Lou's murder about 4 days after the discovery of her body. My family was visiting Springfield. Our moms had planned a visit for us, and our parents must have been so overwhelmed by the unbearable, unexpected horror and grief that they did not think to inform us of Betty Lou's disappearance and death, Lisa said. The result of the autopsy that was conducted on Betty's body was soon out, and according to the chief medical examiner, Dr. William Mosig, she had died as a result of multiple blunt force injuries to the head, a skull fracture, and terminal drowning. This suggested that she had been alive when she went into the river. Dr. Williams also revealed that she had been dead since the day she disappeared. There was also no evidence to suggest that she had been sexually molested. In the end, her death was labeled a murder, and an investigation to find her killer began in earnest. The investigation was undertaken by the Springfield Police Department, and they were also assisted by the Chicopee Police Department. In addition to this, both the Hampton County District Attorney's Office and the Massachusetts State Police also partook in the investigation. Detectives took their time to search along the shore of the river where the body was found. Divers also got into the river in search of clues, but nothing came out of these extensive searches. The part of the river where her body has been found was 10 feet deep, but despite its depth at that spot, the river was generally a slow-moving one. Due to this, detectives speculated that it was unlikely that she suffered her injuries on the bottom of the river. This meant that her killer had badly beaten her up and dumped her body into the water. Detectives also believed that Betty knew her killer based on the phone call she had received before leaving the house. During the course of interviewing her friends, families, as well as classmates, detectives got to find out something very important. Betty had been seen talking to a man in a car sometime around 6 p.m. on the day she went missing. Detectives believed that she had gotten into the vehicle of this unknown man, and he had driven her to the area where her body had been found. Through the help of several eyewitnesses, a composite sketch of the unknown man was developed. In the drawing that was made, the man wore black framed glasses and was described by the police as being 17 years of age, 5 feet 5 inches, weighing between 125 and 135 pounds, and had black hair and brown eyes. He was also given the name Ralph, since this was a name that was mentioned several times by Betty's friends. At the time, Captain Harold O'Connor, who was the Chicopee Detective Bureau, mentioned that he had no idea if the individual existed, and if he did, they needed the help of the community in finding him. The sketch of the man was published in newspapers with the hope that someone would recognize him and come forward to give the police some vital information. June 2, 1966 was the day Betty would have turned 11, but it ended up being the day she was buried. A funeral was conducted for her at the Holy Name Church in Chicopee, and several of her classmates as well as teachers from her school were in attendance. Many could hardly hold back their tears as the coffin containing Betty's body was lowered into the grave. Several weeks went by after this, and Betty's killer remained at large. The investigation into the murder was leading nowhere, and soon the case went cold. In 1980, Betty's mother Mildred accidentally fell to her death from the window of the house where she resided. Some believed that she had committed suicide. The following year, Betty's father Stanley also died from an unknown cause. He was 64. In November 1997, detectives from the West Springfield Police Department suddenly got information regarding Betty's murder, and this got them excited. It's not clear what the information was or how they came upon it, but a name kept coming up in the course of their investigation. The name was Donald Mars. Detectives tried to uncover as much as they could about Donald, and when they did, It was discovered that he had been convicted in May 1995 of having sexually molested 2 children. He was charged with forcefully raping a child and indecent assault and battery on a child under 14. For the crime, he was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison and was released on probation in June 1997. In addition to this, he was also listed as a level 3 sex offender. After detectives found out all this about Donald Mars, they intensified their investigation and interviewed several witnesses. However, the evidence that they had was not solid enough to link him with Betty's death. And once again, the investigation went cold. Around 2019, the Hampton District Attorney's Office Unresolved Cases Unit was informed. It was created to review homicides that remain unsolved in Hampton County and bring renewed attention to them. Shortly after its formation, the attention of detectives from the unit was brought to Betty's murder, and they took it upon themselves to solve the case. They began working around the clock by examining past evidence. Their investigation led them once again to none other than Donald. With time, it became clear that he was really the man they had been looking for all along. Detectives, however, refused to release details on how exactly they came to finally realize that Donald had been the killer. On November 1st, 2022, Donald was charged with first-degree murder in the death of Betty. He was arrested the following day at a Veterans Administration facility in Bedford, where he was living. On November 3rd, he appeared in a Springfield court through a video call from a call at the Hampton County Correctional Center in Ludlow. The charges were read to him, but he maintained his innocence. He was ordered to be held without bail, and the case is set to be continued in May 2023. At a news conference which followed shortly after Donald's arraignment, Hampton District Attorney Anthony Galini said the following: "Sadly, Betty Lou's parents are deceased and will not see Donald Mars answer for what we allege he did to their daughter. My office has been in contact with Betty Lou's extended family members, one of whom was a pallbearer at her funeral in 1966. While this investigation will not bring Betty Lou back to her family or grant her the opportunity to grow into a healthy adult that she and every child deserves, it is for them and for Betty Lou that we embark upon this journey of seeking justice." The case of Sierra Lamar. Sierra was born on October 19, 1996, with an older sister, Danielle, who was about 4 years older. Despite their comfortable upbringing, the sisters experienced a traumatic incident when they were younger. Their father, Steve, engaged in inappropriate sexual behavior with a classmate during a sleepover. When the truth was discovered, Steve pleaded no contest to indecent actions with a child and was sentenced to 1 year in prison. This revelation devastated the family, ultimately leading to Steve and Sierra's mother, Marlene, ending their relationship. After the breakup, Marlene started dating a new man. Meanwhile, Sierra and Danielle attended Washington High School, where they were socially active and performed moderately well academically. Sierra was known for her happy-go-lucky personality, being fun-loving, vivacious, and kind. She enjoyed participating in dance competitions and cheering. Marlene moved from Fremont to Morgan Hill, a city 40 miles southwest, with Sierra and Rick Gardner, her boyfriend, in October 2011. They rented a rural ranch-style home on Pito Hispanic Court, surrounded by agricultural land. Rick worked in construction, but money was still tight despite his business improving. Sierra was unhappy about leaving her friends and hobbies behind, starting anew in a place where she knew no one. At Washington High, she was well-liked, but at SA High School, she didn't receive the same warm welcome. However, with time, settled in, made friends, earned her peers' respect, and even rejoined the cheerleading squad. By March 2012, Sierra had adapted to her new surroundings. On March 11th, she called her Fremont-based parents to give them an update. The conversation was largely positive. She was excited about an upcoming school assignment, wanted to dye her hair on her next Fremont visit, and discussed her homework with her sister. Sierra was doing well academically and ended her chat with Danielle and Steve on Thursday evening, promising to talk to them again soon, unaware that it would be their last conversation. The next morning, February 16, 2012, began like any other in Morgan Hill. Sierra's family got ready for the day around 6 a.m. Her parents, Rick and Marlene, left for work, and Sierra prepared for school. Before leaving the house, she tweeted a friend at 6:29 a.m. Sierra lived far from her school, SA High School, and had to cross a deserted road between Palm and Dury Avenues to catch the bus. As she walked, she texted a friend at 7:11 a.m. to arrange a meetup before classes started. However, when the bus arrived at 7 to 11:15 a.m., Sierra was missing. Sierra's friend didn't show up to meet her, so Sierra skipped class and possibly even skipped school altogether. Her friends found this weird, but they didn't think it was important enough to tell the school. The day went on as usual. When the school day ended, Marlene, Sierra's mom, contacted Sierra as usual to check in on her. However, Sierra's phone went straight to voicemail, which was unusual. Marlene didn't panic yet, but when she got home and saw that Sierra's room was still empty, she knew something was off. Marlene contacted Steve, Sierra's dad, to see if Sierra was planning to visit him in Fremont, which would have been inconvenient, but not alarming. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. When Sierra's friends, including Danielle, didn't hear from her, they all left the same worried messages. Marlene finally called SA High School and discovered that Sierra had missed all her classes. Marlene was frantic, recalling their goodbyes that morning. She said that Sierra had spoken to her, said goodbye, and given her a hug. Everything had seemed fine, and she had told her she loved her. She couldn't believe that she wouldn't contact her friends to let them know she was okay and put them through all that suffering. Officers were immediately sent to Pedo Hispanic Court after the authorities were notified, but since Sierra could have disappeared at any moment, there was no specific location for investigators to start their search. They began by questioning those closest to Sierra, including her friends, who were all truthful about the difficult situation Sierra and her family were facing. Although Sierra was typically happy, her mother's recent divorce had forced her to leave her family and old friends behind just a few months prior. The authorities suspected that she might have voluntarily left, given that she often made lighthearted and serious comments about returning to Fremont. Despite the police downplaying Sierra's disappearance, other factors suggested the opposite. Sierra's sudden disappearance was marked by a complete lack of activity. She stopped posting on social media and didn't respond to calls, which went straight to voicemail. Her phone was off, and her loved ones were left with no way to contact her. As a result, a massive search effort was launched to find her. The investigation began 2 days after Sierra vanished, on a Sunday morning. During this time, data forensics experts analyzed her phone's previous activity and made a surprising discovery. In the middle of the night, her phone had briefly turned on, sending a single electrical ping before shutting off again. The phone's coordinates at the time were traced back to a field near Sierra's house at dawn, providing a crucial lead in the case. A search team carefully searched the area where Sierra's phone had last been located and quickly found it near the road. The phone, a Samsung Galaxy, was badly damaged and had clearly been thrown from a vehicle. Investigators determined that Sierra hadn't turned on her phone that evening, but rather the rain had temporarily charged the phone, causing it to send a false signal. A crucial piece of evidence was discovered by sheer luck. The outcome of the investigation hinges on the authorities finding the girl's phone, which was made possible by a raindrop causing a short circuit. Given the circumstances, the detectives were particularly disturbed by the fact that her phone seemed to have been thrown from a moving vehicle, with no signs of footprints, tire tracks, or any other visible evidence. The next day, a search team made a chilling discovery 2 kilometers from Sierra's house. They found her backpack discarded outside a barn, containing her schoolwork, inhaler, and money, items she would have needed for school. It appeared she was forced to abandon her essential belongings. Furthermore, a complete set of clothing, possibly what she was wearing the morning she disappeared, was found in her luggage. This included her pullover pants, socks, shoes, and undergarments. The outfit was sent for DNA testing, which yielded promising results. The DNA analysis revealed the presence of male DNA on her pants, indicating that she was likely assaulted. Following Sierra's disappearance, the search efforts significantly intensified, with a surge in local and international sympathy after her phone and clothing were found. The authorities received over 1,000 new leads and invested more than 7,000 hours into the investigation. A massive search operation was launched involving over 800 individuals divided into multiple teams. The teams meticulously searched every lake, reservoir, and field in the area, and also combed through abandoned buildings. Sierra's name became a household name with posters plastered all over the community. Her parents even offered a $10,000 reward for any credible information leading to her discovery. Despite the exhaustive efforts, however, only a golf ball and a flip-flop were found. 12 days after Sierra's disappearance, investigators made a breakthrough in the case. A DNA sample found on her pants was matched to a local man, Antolin Garcia Torres, who lived in the Morgan Hill area. This discovery came after authorities compared the DNA to that of all 57 registered sex offenders living in the same zip code. It's worth noting that Sierra's father, a registered offender himself, voluntarily came forward and shared his prior criminal history with the police shortly after his daughter went missing. He was quickly cleared as a suspect, allowing investigators to focus on other leads. Antolin Garcia Torres, a 21-year-old man, became a person of interest due to the DNA match. At the time, he lived with his mother, pregnant wife, and young daughter at the Maple Leaf RV Park, approximately 7 miles from Sierra's home. Antolin's past is concerning, marked by a difficult upbringing with abuse and neglect. His father was abusive and even threatened to kill Antolin and his mother before being imprisoned for molesting a family member. Unfortunately, Antolin seemed to have inherited his father's harmful behavior. In 2009, he was accused of having sex with a minor, but the charges were dropped. However, his DNA was collected during the investigation. The following year, he was detained for interfering with police operations. The suspicious relationship between Sierra and Antolin raised concerns, leading detectives to keep a close eye on him. Since Antolin was the most likely person to know Sierra's whereabouts, the police took steps to monitor his movements and communication. They tapped his phone, placed a GPS tracker in his car, and even stationed 2 undercover investigators in an RV next to his house to keep him under surveillance. Investigating Antolin's alibi, detectives reviewed security footage from the RV park and neighboring areas on the day of Sierra's disappearance. The footage revealed that Antolin had left the campground in his red Volkswagen Jetta at 7 a.m., which corresponded with the time frame of Sierra's kidnapping, given the short 7-mile distance between his home and Sierra's. Although Antolin claimed to have gone to work, Safeway's records showed he never arrived on March 16th. Further inquiry by his management uncovered disturbing information. 3 attempted kidnappings had occurred in the same Safeway parking lot just 3 years prior, although the perpetrators were never caught. The only evidence from these incidents was a dropped taser with a partial fingerprint on one of its batteries. However, a complete match would require a direct one-to-one comparison. The thought of Antolin being the suspect seemed appealing, but when his fingerprints were matched with those on the taser, the investigators were shocked to discover that he was their man. The evidence was mounting against him. His DNA was found on Sierra's pants, and he had a history of involvement in kidnappings. This was enough to detain him and seize his car for further DNA testing. During the interview, Antolin came across as arrogant, but the test results were damaging. He claimed to have gone fishing on the day Sierra vanished, and had no idea who she was. However, the investigators were skeptical of his explanation. What's more, Antolin made a strange admission. He had a disturbing habit of strangling snakes while driving and throwing them out the window. He also admitted to throwing a used tissue out the window in the same spot where Sierra's bag was found on the morning she disappeared. This, combined with the 1 in a million chance of rain on Sierra's phone, made his explanation seem even more implausible. As a result, Antolin Garcia Torres was formally arrested on May 21, 2012, in connection with Sierra Lamar's disappearance outside his workplace in a Safeway parking lot. Distinct evidence linkages were found between Sierra and Antolin's vehicle. A DNA examination confirmed that Sierra's DNA was present on the rear door's interior door handle. Furthermore, fibers on Sierra's clothing matched those on Antolin's car seats, and a piece of rope in his car contained a hair strand from Sierra. This evidence conclusively proves that Sierra was in Antolin's car at some point. Despite Antolin's arrest, a significant issue remained. Sierra's body had not been found and her death had not been verified. This raised the question of whether Antolin could be accused of first-degree murder without a body or confirmed death. Santa Clara County District Attorney Jeff Rawson announced on May 19, 2014, that he would seek the death penalty against Antolin. Although Antolin had pleaded not guilty to Sierra's murder, the overwhelming evidence against him left little room for error. After delays, Antolin's trial finally began on January 30, 2017. The story begins in Macungie, Pennsylvania, the second oldest municipality in Lehigh County. It is part of the Lehigh Valley Metropolitan Region and is a suburb of Allentown. Currently, Lower Macungie is recognized for its beautiful home complexes. It has become one of the most desired areas in the Lehigh Valley for families who have chosen to reside here because of the township's beautiful environment, acres of open space, and exceptional schools. Holly Grimm was born to Jeanette and Richard Grimm in 1972. She liked bowling from her teenage years, and she used to play regularly on the weekends with her friends. She was a great Dale Earnhardt supporter. She worked at Allen, Oregon in Macungie, Pennsylvania. Holly was very close to her mother as they always spoke on the phone before Holly went to work. They lived very close to each other as they both lived in the Red Maple Trailer Park. Holly didn't know many of her neighbors, but Tammy was the one she was really close to. Holly and Tammy used to drop their kids off at the school bus stop together in the mornings regularly. On the morning of the 22nd of November, 2013, Jeanette got very tense when Holly didn't pick up her calls thrice. She drove over to Holly's trailer and saw that Holly's car was still in the driveway. She had a key for Holly's trailer. So she flung open the door and was stunned as there was complete silence. When she walked inside, she observed a coffee mug on the floor and an ashtray on its side beside the couch, and immediately felt a chill run down her spine. She was stunned when she discovered that Holly's asthma inhaler was still on the nightstand. She knew that Holly never left the house without her inhaler. As quickly as she could, she left the trailer. As soon as she re-entered the vehicle, she sensed that something was awry. She went to Holly's boyfriend's house in the hopes of finding her there. But when he informed Jeanette that he hadn't really seen Holly recently, things became more serious. Jeanette heard it and was silent. Something suddenly entered her thoughts. She phoned Holly's office in some hope, but she was informed that Holly had never shown up for work, and had also never called to let anybody know she would be on a break. Jeanette was worried as many unwanted views were emerging in her mind. She immediately contacted the Macungie Police Department as she was left with no option. The police arrived quickly and without wasting a second, Jeanette briefed them on everything and gave them Holly's trailer keys. Holly's car keys were on the floor by the front entrance, and her glasses were on the coffee table when the officers entered the trailer. As they looked around the trailer, they saw a coffee stain that was still damp. A lone black button was discovered as well, which went with nothing in Holly's wardrobe when they checked. As they looked around some more, they saw that the rear door of the trailer was open and that there was no evidence of forced entry. But there was a brilliant crimson stain outside the entrance. After being tested, it was revealed to be human DNA, but it wasn't Holly's. The forensic examiner said the fact that it hadn't been exposed to any changes in its surroundings suggests that it was only recently left on the door, which was useful information. When police told Jeanette about this, she said that Holly never left the home that way and that the back door was always closed. It was clear to the police that the trailers were packed in closely together. They decided to find out whether or not any of their neighbors had noticed anything unusual. The policeman approached the trailers close to Holly's and started questioning the residents there. Holly's close friend Tammy was the first to speak with the police because of their strong friendship. Tammy told the police that, as always, she and Holly waited for the bus together that morning. Tammy said that after dropping their kids to the bus stop and the light conversation, the two of them then went their separate ways to their trailers. After that, went to her car and got in. But just after a minute, Holly got out of her vehicle and walked towards her trailer as if she had heard something. She then stopped and turned her head as if she had heard something behind her trailer. She looked for it but seemed to see nothing. After a while, Tammy came out and heard a loud thud coming from Holly's trailer. She said that when she left to go to work, Holly's vehicle was still in the driveway, which was out of the ordinary given that Holly always departed for work before she did. Despite these strange events, she did not take any action or notify anyone. When the police couldn't find Holly's phone, they called AT&T for assistance. The company said that Jeanette had called Holly 3 times, as she had already told the police. They said that the phone was still active and indicated that Holly was heading northeast. But after that point, they were unable to determine the phone's location. According to them, maybe it was turned off. Maybe it was destroyed. The police now decided to go in depth into Holly's life. When they went to Allen, Oregon, where Holly worked, everyone was shocked about what happened to Holly. But when they questioned some of Holly's co-workers, they informed them about something strange. They told the police that their colleague, Michael Horvath, was running very late that morning. According to them, Michael Horvath was very punctual. The police then decided to look for Michael, but when they took an in-depth look at his life, many strange things emerged. Michael G. Horvath was born in 1967. In 2013, he was living in Ross Township, Macungie. He lived with his wife named Kathy. According to the locals of Ross Township, Michael was very mysterious. He was a very strange type of character in the office too. Michael had also cheated on his wife with a woman named Nicole. He had met her on an online website in July 2013. She claimed that she never developed romantic feelings for Michael despite their frequent online conversations. They had only met once in person, but she had felt uneasy around him even then. She declined his invitation the next time because she had plans to accompany her husband to the mall the next day. Michael made a weird remark in response, telling her that he would follow them around the mall. After all this, she was still in touch with him. On the morning that Holly vanished, he had even given her a call. Michael also had a farm bordered by forests, and he often went into them to hunt deer. He even had a trailer in the woods that was soundproof, and had a wench on it to skin and cut off animals. Michael was not a fan of serial killer shows until the debut of Dexter on television. Like Dexter, Michael wanted to be a serial murderer. He really admired the character of Dexter. The series finale aired in September of 2013. 2 months after the series finale aired, Holly Grimm went missing from her trailer. On the 12th of December 2013, the police questioned Michael for the first time. When the police saw Michael walk into the interrogation room, they decided he wasn't a big threat. They saw him as a balding and overweight man who was restless. The police only questioned him about his tardiness to work that day. He said that on his way to work, his car got a flat tire. So he pulled over to an off-ramp to inflate it so he could go home and change it. Holly's trailer was located 2.5 miles from the off-ramp. Then drove home to change the tire and then drove back to his workplace. This is why he arrived late to work that day. They were unable to hold him due to a lack of evidence. In the end, they did nothing and let him go. In March of 2014, after working for more than 20 years, Michael decided to leave his job at Allen, Oregon. The police were still in the search of the missing Holly Grimm. And when they heard about Michael leaving his job, they decided to keep an eye on him. Finally, in August of 2015, police spoke with Michael's wife, Kathy. They talked to her about the day Holly Graham went missing. She said that when she arrived home from work, she found Michael's dirty shoes in the bedroom and the lights on, and thus was established that Michael had missed a day of work. She added more in her statement and said that she had seen Michael doing something in the woods near the house, but she wasn't sure what he was actually doing. Not long after that, Kathy was rummaging around in the garbage when she came upon a bottle of chloroform. She also discovered the date books he used to keep track of Holly's whereabouts. When she found them, she was completely broken, but she confessed all this to the police. But even after all this, she was certain Michael was innocent and incapable of committing a crime like murder. In March 2016, the police came up with an idea. They left a paper message on Michael's truck's windshield. The message implied that they were aware of what he did to Holly Grimm. They were hoping that maybe Michael would be so frightened that he'd visit the place he had put Holly, but nothing like this happened. They again interviewed Michael in September of 2016. In this interview, he came clean about having delivered some products to Holly's house in 2012. He sold a dryer and washer to her. The police were also able to take a blood sample of Michael. They took a blood sample from him because he claimed to have been hurt while retrieving the washer and dryer. But thanks to the great lab work, they were able to determine that the blood on the door was recent, not of years ago. When the DNA results came back, they confirmed that the blood on Holly's trailer's back door belonged to him. This was enough for the police to get a warrant to search his home. They knew that what they were going to uncover would be disturbing. At first, the area of his farm was combed through. During their investigation, the cops came upon a shallow embankment. Small bone fragments and a couple of rib bones were discovered there. Furthermore, they discovered a fragment of scapula that had what seemed to be a gunshot wound. They suspected he had dug up the bones and torched them in a fire pit on his land. The digger who made the discovery informed the police that he suspected some of the dirt and pebbles covering the remains had been brought in from elsewhere. The forensics team confirmed that Holly's remains were among those analyzed. It took many days to search his house completely. They discovered a diary where Holly, her child, her boyfriend, and every movement of their day-to-day life was recorded. The notebook even included the on-off times of Holly's kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom lights. Loud sounds from within Holly's trailer would likewise be noted. What followed was far creepier. He'd drawn a map of all the shadowy spots in the area around Holly's trailer. He even had pictures of Holly from where he'd gone to her home to deliver the products. Police also discovered photos of Holly's bedroom. They were taken from when he had entered the trailer while Holly was not home. It wasn't over yet. The diary also tracked the whereabouts of other women, including a high school student he had been pursuing. They discovered lock-picking tools that he had used to get inside the trailer. They also found multiple pairs of handcuffs, a bottle of chloroform, and stun guns. A gun which police believed to be the murder weapon was also discovered. Among his possessions, law enforcement discovered disturbing images of women being rendered unconscious with chloroform, and a film which was titled Hunting Humans. Holly's mother, Jeanette, raised Holly's child, but she passed away in March 2017 after Holly's body was found. She found her daughter, which must have brought her some solace, but she did not live to see justice rendered. The trial of Michael Gene Horvath finished in June 2022 with a guilty verdict. The prosecution was seeking the death sentence, but it took another 3 months for the final sentence. On September 8, 2022, Michael Horvath was sentenced to life in prison in Monroe County. After hearing the sentence, Michael said, "I am sorry for their loss, but Judge, I did not commit this murder and I am going to fight this till the end." What do you think of the sentence of Michael Horvath? And what are your views on the final statement of Michael? A horrific murder that shocked all of Canada happened by sheer chance, triggered by the pathological lies of a criminal who got tangled in a web of his own deceit. Brett Ryan was born in 1980 in Toronto into a large, close-knit family. Besides him, the Ryan couple had 3 more sons, older Christopher and Leland and younger AJ. The parents, who advocated for a healthy lifestyle, tried to instill the right values in their children. The head of the family worked at a newspaper and moonlighted as a fitness coach in his spare time. The mother devoted herself to housekeeping and growing flowers, which was her passion. The woman had to be strict, sometimes even harsh in raising 4 boys, while the father was known for his gentleness and restraint. Each of the sons followed his own path in life. Chris worked as a conductor and was very modest. Leland found his calling in photography and music, and Brett was always described as a gregarious, cheerful guy. Chapter 2: Brett's Academic and Financial Woes. After finishing school, Brett enrolled at the University of Toronto but quickly encountered difficulties with his studies. The young man went through 2 painful breakups with girls, after which he couldn't focus at all on preparing for exams and eventually dropped out of college. He watched with envy as his friends and classmates built relationships, got married, and achieved success, while he couldn't get anything right. This bred a sense of failure in Brett. After getting a job as a painter, the guy realized this wasn't for him. At the same time, Brett loved himself, strived to look good, and spent a lot of money on his own needs and on girls. Because of this, he accumulated a large debt, $60,000 Canadian dollars, which he had no way to repay. Creditors started demanding their money back, which plunged Brett into a deep depression. The young man felt like a total loser, but never confessed his problems to anyone. Chapter 3. Brett's Bank Robbery Plan. Desperately trying to find a way out of his predicament and quickly get his hands on a large sum of money, Brett resolved to rob a bank. On October 20th, 2007, he set his plan in motion. The guy chose a financial institution not far from his house. To disguise himself, he wrapped his face in bandages and faked him injury to his left arm. Pretending to limp and carrying a stack of papers, Brett entered the bank posing as a sick man. Approaching the teller, he handed the cashier a note demanding money and threatening that he had a weapon hidden in his bandages. The frightened employee quickly gave the robber all the cash from the register, but it turned out to be just a little over $1,000. Although Brett wasn't happy with his amount, he decided not to draw extra attention, swiftly grabbed the money, and vanished from the crime scene. Despite the security cameras recording the robbery, Brett managed to avoid arrest. Feeling a sense of impunity, he continued robbing banks, but in other parts of the city. Changing his disguise tactics to a hat and a fake beard, the young man became more cautious. In total, Brett robbed 12 banks, netting over $28,000 in loot. Chapter 4. The Unmasking and Imprisonment of the Robber. Eventually, police managed to track down the brazen robber, and on June 20th, 2008, 28-year-old Brett was arrested during an attempted robbery. The guy's family was in deep shock as Brett had once volunteered at a children's hospital and had now turned into a criminal. The court sentenced him to 5 years in prison. While serving his sentence, experts evaluated the convict's mental state and found no signs of aggression or propensity for violence. Throughout his time, Brett never used prohibited substances and had no mental disorders. Moreover, due to his exemplary behavior, he was granted parole after 2 years. The prison staff were simply charmed by this pleasant, charismatic, and hardworking young man. In their opinion, he had just made a fatal mistake due to the burden of debt and deserved a second chance. Brett's profile stated that he was a model prisoner with minimal risk of reoffending. Chapter 5. Brett's Attempts to Start a New Life. According to the terms of his parole, Brett had to undergo a course of psychotherapy and report any problems he encountered in his family relationships with girls or at work. After all, these were the factors that could trigger him to relapse. But despite his sincere intentions to start a new life, reality proved to be much more complicated. The debts didn't go away, and there was no way to pay them off. Finding a job with a criminal record turned out to be extremely difficult. No one wanted to hire an ex-convict, even as a painter. In desperation, Brett declared bankruptcy. His parents came to the rescue, supporting their son financially. This allowed him to resume his studies at the university, but this time in the information technology department. Brett also continued to visit a psychotherapist by court order and diligently tried to put his life back together. It was during therapy that he was advised to be more honest and open with those around him. Chapter 6. Brett and Kristen's Fateful Meeting. One day in September 2011, Brett's friends set him up on a blind date with a pretty girl named Kristen Baxter. She worked as a physiotherapist, lived in her own apartment with her little dog, and loved to travel. A spark instantly ignited between Brett and Kristen. They immediately hit it off and felt a mutual attraction. The young people were united by common interests. Like Kristen, adored animals and travel. Soon they started dating. The couple spent a lot of time together, attended sports events, and went on hikes. Brett even accompanied Kristen and her family on a vacation to the Bahamas. Plus, the girl's dog immediately took a liking to him. It seemed that Brett's life was finally getting back on track, and he was no longer drawn to dubious ventures. He longed for a quiet and cozy life next to his beloved girlfriend. In January 2013, Brett moved into Kristen's apartment, marking a new stage in their relationship. The couple began to think about getting married. Chapter 7. Hiding the Truth from His Beloved. A new life began for Brett. The young man, who had grown up in a quiet suburb, was now immersed in the bustle of vibrant city life with its numerous restaurants, shops, and interesting places. The young couple enjoyed visiting cozy eateries together and taking evening swims in the pool. However, as it turned out, all this time, while Brett's brothers were building their careers and becoming independent, he was only studying, living on his parents' money. The couple often traveled to warm countries together. Brett's father suddenly passed away. The young man temporarily moved in with his mother to help with the funeral arrangements and support her during this difficult time. That's when he confessed to Susan that he was madly in love with Kristen and dreamed of marrying her. However, he didn't have the money for a decent engagement ring, so he hesitated with the proposal. Touched by her son's words, his mother handed him money for an expensive ring. Brett bought a luxurious diamond ring and proposed to Kristen. Beaming with happiness, the girl said yes. The couple immersed themselves in pleasant wedding preparations. Brett even looked for side jobs to be able to surprise his beloved and shower her with gifts, but these were insignificant sums. The guy had no idea how he would provide for a family in the future. He carefully concealed from his fiancée his problems with the law, bankruptcy, and debts. Abandoning his futile studies, Brett focused on finding a decent job. Chapter 8: A failed attempt to get a job. At the beginning of 2016, fortune finally smiled upon Brett. He got a good job in the field of information technology. The guy joyfully shared this news with Kristen, and the couple decided to celebrate the occasion with family. However, as soon as his new employer learned about his criminal past, they immediately refused to hire him. This was a crushing blow to Brett's ego. Not wanting to upset his beloved, he decided not to tell her about yet another failure. Instead, Brett pretended that he would be working remotely from home. While Kristen was getting ready for work, he pretended to be working at the computer. The girl was happy that they would finally get on their feet and Brett would start earning good money. She enthusiastically prepared for the wedding, scheduled for September 16th, 2016, choosing the most beautiful and expensive options, as they could now supposedly afford it. A luxurious banquet hall was booked for the ceremony. The pre-wedding bachelor party was planned to be celebrated at a posh ski resort. The couple even started looking at a spacious and cozy house where they dreamed of settling after the wedding, as they were tired of being cramped in a small apartment. Susan was overjoyed, believing that her son had finally gotten on his feet, graduated from university, and found a high-paying job. The woman eagerly anticipated the wedding and Brett's move into his own home. Chapter 9: Brett's Lies Exposed. But in reality, this was all a blatant lie. Brett had nothing to his name but deceit. He got so tangled up in a web of his own fabrications that he couldn't extricate himself from it. In desperate attempts to get money, the guy took any side job he could find and even helped his mother around the house for pay. He came to her every day, looking for things to fix or do around the house to receive financial rewards. Susan found her son's insistence suspicious as he hung around her house all day long, constantly tinkering with something instead of working. If Brett was earning as well as he claimed, why did he need these odd jobs? The woman wondered. She started asking her son uncomfortable questions, which he initially tried to dodge. But then, remembering the therapist's advice about the importance of honesty, Brett finally dared to confess his troubles to his mother. He begged Susan for substantial financial assistance, promising to keep looking for work. However, his mother was extremely disappointed with her son's life failures. She was filled with indignation that Brett hadn't even managed to finish university and get an education. Susan flatly refused to give him money and threatened to tell Kristen everything. Chapter 10: The Birth of a Criminal Plan. His mother's harsh words infuriated Brett. He was seized by a panic fear that Kristen would leave him if she learned the truth. The guy was desperate to avoid this at all costs. More than anything in the world, he feared ending up on the streets again, without his beloved girlfriend and returning under his mother's care. Brett didn't want to fear like a miserable loser for the rest of his life. And then a monstrous plan took shape in his head. Since his criminal record prevented him from legally purchasing firearms, decided to get a crossbow. To avoid attracting undue attention, the guy bought a used crossbow for cash. The next day, Brett went to his mother's house again, supposedly to help with repairs for money. Chapter 11: The Bloody Massacre. On August 25, 2016, Kristen woke up early as usual and went to work to see her patients. Pretended to stay home and work, but in fact, he started getting ready to go to his mother's. Suddenly, it dawned on the guy. To avoid suspicion, he needed an alibi. The resourceful Brett crafted a device that imitated him working at the computer by periodically pressing keys. In addition, he set up automatic email sending at a specific time. Next, Brett packed all the necessary items for his disguise into a sports bag, including clothes and a wig. Slipping out of the house unnoticed through the fire escape to avoid being captured by surveillance cameras, the guy headed to Susan's place. Just as stealthily, in a mask and wig so that no one would recognize him, Brett arrived at his mother's house. On the doorstep, he took off all his disguise and went inside. Once again, Brett tried to talk to his mother and convince her to help him with money, but Susan was unyielding. A fierce argument broke out between them. The woman insisted that her son confess his lies to Kristen himself. Otherwise, she threatened to expose him on her own. Meanwhile, the quarrel flared up with renewed vigor. Sensing something was wrong, Susan took advantage of the moment when Brett briefly stepped out and urgently called her eldest son, Chris. She begged him to come over and help deal with the conflict with Brett, and Brett went to the garage for a reason. He had hidden a crossbow there in advance. Returning with the weapon, the guy started fiddling with it, setting everything up for the shot. This task turned out to be not so simple and took some time. Suddenly, his mother entered the garage. In a fit of blind rage, Brett grabbed the first tool he could find and struck Susan twice, hitting her cheek and ear. The woman screamed in pain, shocked that her own son had raised a hand against her. A fight broke out between them. During the scuffle, both fell to the floor and rolled around in a tangle, knocking everything down in their path. Brett groped for a long, dirty rag and, without much thought, strangled his 63-year-old mother with it. Only after committing the deed did it begin to dawn on him that everything had gone wrong. The perfect murder had turned into a nightmare. The guy suddenly remembered that Chris, summoned by his mother, was about to arrive. Upon seeing her body, his older brother would immediately realize whose handiwork this was. Without much hesitation, decided to get rid of Chris as an unwanted witness. He jumped up, grabbed the crossbow, and started fiddling with it again. Now a plan to kill his brother was brewing in Brett's head. Having prepared everything for the new crime, he lurked in the garage, waiting for Chris. Soon, the unsuspecting 42-year-old man crossed the threshold in search of his mother. At that moment, Brett silently approached him from behind and shot him point blank in the back of the head. Chris instantly fell dead. Brett dragged his bloodied body over to his mother's corpse and covered them with a tarp. The guy rushed to grab his bag of clothes to quickly change and flee. Unexpectedly, Brett's younger brother, 29-year-old AJ, appeared at the doorstep of his mother's house coming for a visit. For Brett, this was real catastrophe. He frantically pondered what to do next, change clothes and run or stay and kill AJ too. Brett feared that his younger brother, upon discovering the bodies, would immediately call the police, and then he would certainly be caught. This pushed the guy to commit yet another gruesome murder. After tracking down AJ, Brett followed him, holding the crossbow at the ready. He crept up to his unsuspecting victim with the intention of cunningly shooting him in the back of the head, just like Chris. But this time, something went wrong. AJ sensed danger and noticed the armed Brett. A life-and-death fight broke out between the brothers. At some point, Brett managed to wound AJ, hitting him in the neck with a crossbow. AJ screamed in pain and fled. He ran out of the house, leaving a trail of blood in the sand, and collapsed exhausted in the driveway. It turned out that there was another brother in the house, 39-year-old Leland, who had been carelessly sleeping this whole time. He was awakened by AJ's horrific scream. Looking out the window, Leland saw his bloodied brother on the path. The man rushed to the phone to call 911, but he didn't make it. At that very moment, a crazed Brett pounced on him. A fierce fight broke out between the brothers, which rolled through the entire house, turning it into a bloody mess. Taking advantage of the moment when Brett was distracted, the wounded Leland managed to slip out unnoticed, crawl to the neighbors, and lose consciousness on their doorstep. The good people immediately called the police. Meanwhile, the enraged Brett dashed back into the yard, catching a glimpse of the wounded AJ, who was trying to crawl away, bleeding. Obsessed with the desire to finish off his younger brother at all costs before he attracted the neighbor's attention, Brett chased after him. Chapter 12. The finale of the bloody drama. As he pursued AJ, Brett suddenly saw that Leland had managed to fully rat him out to the neighbors. From that point on, the guy no longer had any chance of salvation. The police were about to arrive at the crime scene and put an end to his bloody odyssey. Brilliant plan for the perfect murder had crumbled to pieces. In despair, decided to surrender. Unhurriedly, he returned to his mother's house, grabbed a bottle of water, and settled on the porch, patiently waiting for the arrival of law enforcement. When the first patrol cars and an ambulance pulled up, the medics immediately pronounced Susan and Chris dead. AJ was still showing signs of life, but was in extremely critical condition. On the way to the hospital, he died from his injuries. As for Leland, although he was hurt, he survived. He was urgently hospitalized and provided with the necessary medical care. Over time, the man began to recover. Chapter 13. The shocking truth for Kristen Brett was arrested at the crime scene and faced terrible charges of triple first-degree murder and attempted murder of his brother. The news stunned Kristen, as there were only 3 weeks left until the wedding. The unfortunate bride learned the horrifying truth about her beloved for the first time. His criminal past, conviction for robbery, financial problems, lack of a job, and the gruesome murder of his own family. How could she have lived under the same roof with this monster for so long? The shocked girl immediately canceled the wedding. Returning to the apartment, Kristen discovered the contraption Brett had crafted himself for his alibi. Not understanding what this strange gadget was, she mistook it for an explosive device and frantically called the police. Law enforcement officers arrived at the scene, promptly evacuated the building's residents, and began cautiously examining the mysterious device. It soon became clear that it posed no danger, but the cops were amazed by Brett's extraordinary ingenuity and scrupulousness. One couldn't deny his intelligence and inner strength, which unfortunately he had channeled in the wrong direction. If only Brett had chosen the right path in life from a young age, his potential could have brought much good to society. Chapter 14. Admission of guilt and sentencing. At the court hearing, decided to plead guilty. He made a deal with the prosecution, agreeing to have his actions qualified as a triple second-degree murder. Trying to mitigate the sentence, the guy claimed that he had only planned to scare his mother with the crossbow and have a serious conversation with her. Allegedly, he wanted Susan to finally understand and support him. But unfortunately, everything got out of control. Brett swore that he had not intended to do anything to his brothers. They had simply ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. However, the prosecution insisted otherwise. In their firm belief, the defendant had planned from the very beginning to brutally deal with his mother, not just talk to her. The prosecutors argued that Brett had taken the crossbow with him specifically to kill Susan, and therefore must face severe responsibility. As a result, the guy was found guilty of first-degree murder of his mother and second-degree murder of his brothers. The court handed down a harsh sentence, 3 life terms with the right to parole no earlier than 25 years. In addition, Brett was sentenced to 10 years for the attempted murder of his brother Leland. All punishments are to be served simultaneously. This means that the guy will only be able to seek early release in a quarter of a century. The sole surviving brother Leland greeted the verdict with relief. Despite all the pain and bitterness of loss, he sincerely respected Brett for his expressed remorse. In Leland's deep conviction, his younger brother was not a bad person at heart, but had unfortunately become hopelessly lost in life. Brett had stepped onto the slippery path of deceit and eventually got completely mired in the quagmire of his own lies. He could no longer extricate himself from it, which led to a terrible tragedy. Brett Ryan's horrific story serves as a warning to us all. It vividly demonstrates how seemingly small lies and concealing the truth can lead to dire consequences. At some point, the lies grow, accumulating new details and become uncontrollable, ruining not only the deceiver's life, but also the lives of their loved ones. Brett had every chance to get on the right track after his first prison term. He had the support of his beloved girlfriend and family. He could have gotten an education and found a job. However, the guy chose a different path, the path of untruth, which ultimately led to a terrible tragedy and destroyed more than one life. It doesn't matter whether Brett acknowledged his mistake sincerely, or if his remorse was merely a way to soften the sentence. What's much more important is what conclusions he will draw himself while serving his life sentence. Will he be able to rethink his life and at least try to become a better version of himself? Only Brett himself knows the answer. However, his story definitely makes us reflect on our own actions. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize once again, honesty and responsibility are not just pretty words, but a vital necessity. It's important to value our loved ones, trust them, and share our problems with them. After all, it's much easier to overcome difficulties together and find a way out even from seemingly hopeless situations. Only on a solid foundation of truth, trust, and mutual support can we build a happy future. And perhaps had Brett Ryan known this, he would have never set foot on the wrong path that led in behind bars. This story should serve as a lesson and reminder to all of us that our most precious treasure in life is our family and loved ones. So let's cherish them, respect them, and above all, be honest with ourselves, because self-deception is the first step towards a real-life tragedy. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.